He sat in the shadows of a rundown diner, a billionaire, quietly crying where no one cared to look. The rain pounded like guilt on glass. But one waitress saw him, and what she discovered wasn't just pain. It was a buried secret and a chance for revenge. The diner lights buzzed low, flickering against the storm that painted the windows in streaks of rain. Outside, thunder rolled like distant regret. Inside, the world felt still, stuck between late-night silence and closing time fatigue. Forks clinked gently. A waitress yawned behind the counter. A couple argued in whispers near the jukebox, their words sharp but tired. Then the door creaked open. Heads barely turned. Just another drifter, someone figured. Maybe homeless, maybe lost. He moved slow, hunched over, with the hood pulled so low it swallowed his face. Wet footprints followed him to the back booth, the one nobody liked to sit in because the cushion sank too deep and the lamp above it buzzed. He sat down without saying a word. Maya Carter noticed him instantly. She always did notice things, people mostly. How they avoided eye contact. How they held their hands when they were nervous. How they cried without making a sound. She glanced toward her manager, who was scribbling on receipts near the register. He didn't look up. Maya took a step forward, towel in one hand, heart tapping against her ribs. Something about this man didn't feel right. Not dangerous, just wronged. He pulled the hood back slowly. He looked older than she expected, early 40s, maybe. Hair dark and matted to his forehead. His jaw clenched like he was holding back a scream. And then she saw it, his eyes. Bloodshot, shimmering. A single tear slipped down his cheek and hit the table with a soft tap. No one saw it. No one cared. Except her. She stood frozen for a moment, then turned to grab the coffee pot. As she poured into the cleanest mug she could find, her manager barked, "Maya, we're done for the night. Don't waste supplies on strays." She hesitated, just for a second, then placed the coffee on a tray and walked toward the man in the corner. He didn't look up. "Late night for you," she said gently, setting the mug in front of him. No reply. Storm's hitting hard. "You all right?" Still nothing, but his fingers twitched slightly. A flicker. Like maybe he wanted to say something, but didn't know how. Maya didn't push. She just sat on the edge of the booth across from him. Uninvited, but not unwelcome. In that small act, something shifted. Not in the air, not in the room, but inside him. He finally whispered, barely audible over the thunder. "Do you ever feel like everyone forgets you, even when they know your name?" Maya blinked. She wasn't expecting that. She nodded slowly, her voice soft. "More than you'd think." They sat in silence after that. But it wasn't the awkward kind. It was the kind that holds weight. Like something important just began, quietly, in the corner of a tired old diner, with a billionaire no one recognized and a waitress who refused to look away. The clock on the wall ticked louder than it should have. Maya glanced at it, 10:42 p.m., way past the usual dinner rush. Way too early for breakfast. The in-between hours, where time dragged and thoughts wandered. She looked back at the man across the booth. His eyes hadn't left the coffee, though it had gone cold. She didn't push him to drink it. Some people just needed something to hold. She sat quietly, her apron folded in her lap, her name tag slightly scratched from years of shifts that bled together. Maya. Most people read it once and forgot it by dessert. But she never forgot a name. "You sure you're okay?" she asked again, more out of kindness than habit. Still no answer. Maya studied him, not with judgment, but curiosity. His hands were shaking, just barely. Not from cold, but something else. His knuckles looked like they'd taken a few punches in their time. But his coat? Cashmere. Torn at the sleeve, but expensive. His watch, scratched and worn, still glinted faintly in the flickering light. Whoever he was, he didn't belong here. Not tonight. Not like this. She leaned back a little, letting her thoughts settle. Maybe he didn't want to talk. Maybe he just needed a place to fall apart, quietly. Maya understood that. She'd once sat in this very booth, holding back tears when the hospital called. Her little brother, Jordan, had taken a bad turn again. That was 2 years ago. He was gone now. She didn't talk about him much. The bell above the diner door rang as the couple near the jukebox left in a huff. Her manager glanced up, eyeing Maya with that "what did I say" look. He called across the floor. "Maya, we're not a shelter. If he's not ordering, he's not staying." Maya turned to respond but bit her tongue. Instead, she smiled tightly and said, "I'll close tonight. You go on ahead." The manager rolled his eyes but tossed his keys on the counter. "Lock up when you're done." When he disappeared into the rain, the diner felt even quieter. More honest somehow. Maya turned back to the man. He finally looked up at her just briefly. Enough for her to see something behind the tears. Not just sadness, not just exhaustion, guilt. He opened his mouth, closed it again, then said, "You don't know who I am, do you?" She tilted her head. "Should I?" A bitter laugh escaped him. "No, probably better you don't." She shrugged, resting her chin on her hand. "You're here. You're hurting. That's enough for me right now." The man stared at her, almost disbelieving, as if no one had said something so simple to him in years. "Why are you still talking to me?" he asked. Her eyes softened, because sometimes being seen is the first step out of whatever darkness you're drowning in. A long silence settled between them again, but this time, it felt warmer. The man gave a small nod, just once, and for the first time since he walked in, he took a sip of the coffee. The rain outside had softened into a steady hush. Streetlights glowed faintly through the diner's fogged windows, casting shadows across the tiles. The world beyond the glass felt far away, like none of it mattered here. Maya leaned back in the booth, still watching the man with cautious empathy. He cleared his throat, setting the coffee mug down with care. "I didn't expect anyone to notice me. Not anymore." Maya offered a quiet smile. Hard to miss a grown man crying into a $300 coat. That got a soft chuckle out of him, the first real sound of life since he arrived. He shook his head. "You know your fabrics." "I know pain in disguise," she replied gently. "Expensive doesn't mean untouchable." His eyes lingered on hers for a moment. Something settled there, trust, maybe, or the beginning of it. "My name's Elliot," he said at last. "Just Elliot. No last name, no handshake." Maya nodded. "Nice to meet you, Elliot." She didn't push, didn't ask for more, but in the back of her mind, something tugged at her. The name, the way he carried himself, like someone used to being listened to and recently forgotten. Elliot's gaze drifted to the wall behind her. "I built an empire," he said, almost to himself. "I used to walk into rooms and everyone stood straighter. Now I walk into a diner and no one even looks up." Maya blinked, lips parting slightly. He sighed. "I'm Elliot Crane." And there it was. The air changed. The name hit like a dropped plate, quiet but shattering. Elliot Crane, the billionaire tech CEO. The man behind Crane Corp, the same company threatening to buy out this very diner's land for a chain development. The man who'd vanished from the public eye 6 months ago after a sudden company scandal and a media breakdown. Maya's body tensed. She remembered the headlines. Billionaire silent after employee tragedy. Crane Corp accused of overwork, negligence. But she didn't move. She didn't call him out. She didn't leave. She just breathed. Elliot watched her carefully. "You know who I am now." Maya nodded, slow and steady. "I know what people say. Doesn't mean I know you." He let out a breath he'd been holding. "That's rare." There was a beat of stillness, like the truth was catching its breath. She folded her arms. "So, what brings a billionaire to a place like this? Looking for something you can't buy." He looked down at his hands. Redemption, maybe. Or punishment. Maya leaned in. "You'll have to be more specific." Elliot's voice cracked. "Someone died because I wasn't listening. And now, I can't live with the silence." The words hung heavy. Maya swallowed hard, eyes searching his face. He wasn't faking. He wasn't hiding behind a press team or a polished statement. He was just broken. And despite everything, a part of her still wanted to understand why. The diner had gone quiet. Even the hum of the fluorescent lights seemed softer, as if the building itself was listening. Maya sat still across from Elliot, the billionaire whose name had once been synonymous with power, speed, and innovation. Now, all she saw was a man unraveling slowly over a cup of black coffee. He rubbed his hands together, nervous, uncertain. "I used to think work was everything. Success, legacy, numbers. He paused, shaking his head. But none of that meant anything when I got that phone call. Maya's voice was barely above a whisper. What happened? Elliot's jaw tensed. His name was Jordan. Her heart skipped. He didn't see it, not yet. He continued. 24. Software engineer. First job out of college. He'd been working insane hours, trying to prove himself. Elliot's voice faltered. He sent emails, asked to be moved to a lighter schedule, said he wasn't doing well. I never saw them. My assistant didn't think it was urgent. Maya's stomach tightened. I met his sister once. She came to the building, angry, said we pushed him too hard. I told security to walk her out. He paused, glancing at her. I never even looked her in the eye. Maya's hands trembled under the table, but she forced herself to stay composed. Don't react. Not yet. Elliot leaned back, shame sinking into his shoulders. He took his life 2 weeks later. The silence was thick now, painful. Maya stared at the Formica tabletop, her thoughts spiraling. Her brother, Jordan. That Jordan. She remembered the helplessness, the anger, the way no one returned her calls, how she screamed at the lobby security as they pushed her back out onto the street, like she was nothing. Now that man sat across from her, crying, confessing, but he didn't know it was her. And she didn't tell him. Not yet. Instead, she asked, why come here? To this diner. Elliot gave a broken laugh. I was driving. No destination. Just away. I saw the neon sign. It felt like a place where I wouldn't be recognized. I thought maybe I could feel normal for a second. Maya's voice was quiet. And did you? He looked at her, eyes raw. Not until you sat down. She nodded slowly, swallowing the lump in her throat. Sometimes it takes losing everything to realize what you never had. His eyes locked with hers, and for the first time, she saw something flicker there. Hope. Fragile but real. I don't know how to fix any of it, he said, but I had to start somewhere. And in that moment, before the truth could rise between them, before the pain could speak its full name, Maya just said the one thing she never got to say back then. Thank you for finally listening. The rain picked up again, ticking softly against the windows like a metronome for the tension building inside the diner. Maya hadn't moved. Her breathing was shallow, controlled. Across from her, Elliot Crane wiped his face with trembling fingers, voice rough from confessions he hadn't planned to make. His words had cracked something open in him and in her. But now, the space between them felt loaded, like it was waiting for a truth that hadn't yet surfaced. You said his name was Jordan, Maya asked, almost too casually. Yeah. Elliot nodded, looking down. Jordan Carter. There it was. Maya blinked hard. Her chest tightened, and for a second, the fluorescent lights above seemed to flicker harder. Maybe they didn't. Maybe it was just her world tilting. Do you remember what he looked like? Elliot frowned, surprised. Honestly, not really. I only saw him in passing. He had a backpack, wore headphones a lot, kept to himself. My team said he had trouble focusing, thought he wasn't a good fit. He gave a bitter laugh. Turns out he was brilliant. We just didn't give him space to breathe. Maya leaned forward slowly, her voice soft, controlled. He liked drawing during lunch breaks, sketched comic panels on napkins, said one day he designed his own game from scratch. Elliot looked up. He used to hum video game soundtracks when he thought no one was listening. And when he got anxious, he rubbed his thumb against the edge of his phone case, left a mark so deep it never went away. Elliot's breath caught in his throat. How do you know that? Maya looked him in the eye, really looked. No anger, no tears, just something heavier, something ancient. Because I'm his sister, she said, each word slow, unshaken. I'm the girl you had escorted out of your building. Silence fell like glass shattering in slow motion. Elliot froze. His eyes widened. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. I begged your company for help, she continued, voice tightening. He was slipping, drowning, and no one would listen. Not HR, not his manager, not you. Elliot's hands trembled again, now visibly. Maya, I didn't know. I screamed in that lobby, she whispered, her eyes glossy but locked. I screamed until they dragged me out. He was already gone by the time I got home. Elliot looked like he'd been punched. I was told it was a security issue, that it was handled. It was handled, she said coldly. Like trash. The air between them turned to ash. Elliot leaned back slowly, tears returning. He was silent for several long seconds before he finally whispered, "I'm sorry. I am so sorry." Maya didn't move, didn't answer. She just sat there. And the man who built a billion-dollar empire, who stood at the top of the world for years, sat across from her, shattered. There were no headlines, no applause, just a quiet reckoning, and two lives forever tied by a single deadly silence. The neon sign outside flickered again, casting dull pulses of red and white across the diner floor. The hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen buzzed like background static. But inside that booth, everything was still. Elliot sat slouched, face buried in his hands. He didn't try to defend himself. He didn't reach for excuses. Just silence and guilt, the heavy kind. Across from him, Maya stayed composed, but her fingers dug slightly into the hem of her apron, her knuckles pale. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was low, measured. "You built systems that punish people for being human." Elliot nodded slowly, not lifting his eyes. "You had the power to protect them, to protect him, but you didn't." "I know," he whispered, his voice raw, "and I can never make that right." A pause, a long one. Maya looked at him. Not the billionaire, not the CEO, not the story on the news, just the man sitting across from her with nothing left. "I wanted to hate you," she said honestly. "Still do sometimes." His breath caught. "But you're here. You're not in a private jet. You're not hiding behind lawyers. You came to this nowhere diner and cried into a cup of coffee." Elliot let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "You could have left when you saw my face," she added. "But you didn't." "I didn't come here for sympathy," he said, finally meeting her eyes. "I came here because I didn't know where else to go. And now I know I ended up exactly where I needed to be." Maya nodded once, slowly. Her expression softened, but not completely. "You're not forgiven," she said, voice trembling slightly. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. I understand. But you are seen," she added. "And maybe that's the beginning." They sat there, quiet again. No one watching. No one performing. Just two people sitting in the rubble of what could have been, and what still might be salvaged. And in that stillness, something settled. Not peace, not resolution, but a moment of fragile truth neither of them had known they needed. The diner felt colder now, not because of the weather, but because the storm had passed, leaving behind the quiet aftermath. Maya stood slowly, picking up the empty mug in front of Elliot. Her hands were steady, but something deep inside her had shifted, like a pressure that had finally been acknowledged after years of silence. Elliot remained seated, his shoulders hunched in a kind of surrender. He wasn't asking for anything. Not forgiveness, not redemption. He just sat in the space she had allowed him to exist in, for the first time, not as a headline, but as a man. "I don't know how to start again," he said softly, almost to himself. Maya paused, then looked down at him. "You already did." He looked up, confused. "By sitting here, by saying his name, by listening when it hurt the most." He nodded slowly. "It's not enough. It's not supposed to be," she said. "But it's something." She turned toward the counter, placing the mug next to the others. The diner was almost dark now, just a single light over the corner booth still glowing. Elliot stood up, unsure if he should say goodbye. Maya glanced over her shoulder. "You still have a lot to fix, Elliot. A lot of people to answer to. I know. But tonight you didn't hide." Her voice softened. "That matters more than you think." He stepped toward the door. Rain had stopped, but the air outside looked heavy, like the earth was still drying off. Just as he reached for the handle, she called out, "Hey." He turned. She hesitated, then added, he always believed people could change, even the ones who broke him. Elliot blinked. A tear slipped down again, but he didn't wipe it away this time. "Thank you," he said, voice cracking. Maya didn't respond. She just nodded once, firm, quiet, and full of something real. And then he stepped out into the night. No press, no flashbulbs, no roar of engines or bodyguards at the door. Just a billionaire, finally seen, and a brave waitress, finally heard.